Available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.
Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday morning, April 25th, 2020, and this is a surprise live stream, a surprise to all of us. I did a keynote at an American Marketing Association conference a few days ago. It was a virtual conference on experience design, and I got so many questions that were just sent to me in an Excel spreadsheet that I didn't get time to answer, that I wanted to answer them now. So since I am live on YouTube and LinkedIn, if anybody has follow-up questions to the questions I'm answering, feel free to join in. Otherwise, I'm going to answer all of these questions that I got, and then I'm going to email, since I got email addresses, I'm going to email everybody the video so that they can see that their questions were answered. I couldn't think of another way to do it, so let me jump in. So I'm looking at an Excel spreadsheet, and I will go through all the questions. There's probably about 20. So this may go a little bit long. Corey asks, and hello, Corey. Are there any CX certificates I recommend? Of course, if you are a frequent viewer of my live streams, you know right now that answer is no. Unfortunately, there are a lot of certificates out there that I feel just don't have value. Of course, whatever value they have is in the eye, usually of the employer. If there is a certificate that will make an employer say, oh, let's hire that person, then that sounds like a certificate you want. But in general, in the UX and CX universes, right now, there aren't really any certificates that seem to have that value. There are some lovely training courses from places like nngroup.com and like Nancy. nngroup.com does some very expensive courses, but people love them. And you do get a certificate at the end, but would that change your job, change your career? I don't know. So I would say right now there's really not a lot of training or certificates that I recommend. Kind of the godfather of UX is planning to redefine UX education in the next year. So I'm curious what there will be after that happens and he sets up more standards for what people should learn. So thank you. I hope that helps. Deborah says, and hello, Deborah K. She says, one problem I find with CX, and so, oh, I had answered this one during it, so let me move on. Dr. Jasveen, hello, Dr. Jasveen, said, is zero defection rate a myth or reality? Now, my understanding of zero defection rate, and I apologize if I have the wrong definition, is it's when a company is doing so much stuff right that pretty much no customers leave, at least in a given period of time. So that would be zero defection, meaning zero customers leaving. You've retained all of your customers. Is it a myth or is it a reality? I have not heard of it yet being a reality, and I'm sure if it is a reality, it could be for a manipulated period of time, like, hey, nobody left today. So I guess the question would be, what period of time are we measuring? And are there other periods of time that would kind of undo that? Did we keep all of our customers 1 month, but lose a bizarre percentage of them another month? So I think that rather than worrying about some of these metrics of how many people left, again, normally in UX and CX, we're a little bit more concerned with the whys. So if people are leaving your company, sure, we can count them, but I would rather be doing more to determine why. And that's things we can do proactively, like the behavior triggers that I talked about, and reactively, as well as noticing people have left and then seeing what we can learn about that. So I hope that helps. Thank you, Dr. Jasveen. Yoon Soo says, how many personas do companies deal with? Sometimes one persona may not be enough. Wow, you're right. One persona is pretty much never enough. In the UX world, we are typically looking at sets of personas that have a maximum number of 6. So if someone gives you a set of 12 personas or a set of, so I once heard about someone doing a set of 19 personas, not a thing. We definitely want personas to be a set, and each persona represents someone from our target audience, kind of an archetype or an aggregated target user based on behavior patterns that we saw from our interviews. So how many personas do companies tend to have? I've noticed that most companies that I've worked with or provided personas for, we typically ended up with 4 to 6. The current best practice is don't make more than 6. If you need more than 6, you might need different sets for some reason. Sometimes that's done, but you definitely don't want one persona. Your company doesn't sell to one person. And quick side note, since this was a talk to marketing people, UX and CX, at least in my world, don't really deal with splitting up personas by demographics. Like we typically don't say white people do this or women do this because I don't design differently necessarily for white people. I don't design differently necessarily for women. So, as I said in my talk, that can be lazy segmentation, and I think we need to go well beyond that. So I would say many companies are dealing with 3 to 6 personas, but sometimes multiple sets of personas if you really can't narrow it down. I hope that helps. Um, Jordan R says, what kind of clues or strategies are there to help us determine whether our guesswork has hit its mark or failed? You know, every company is going to have guesswork to some extent. We just can't avoid it. And very often people start a project with like, I think this about customers, or I bet they're doing this, or maybe this is their problem. Okay, first of all, let's get better at recognizing when we have guesswork and assumptions. Then we can work on taking it head on. Now, there are some models and authors and speakers who say, hey, if you have guesswork and assumptions, just run with them because you'll just find out later if you were right or wrong. And I am against that. I think that's going to be too risky for companies. That's going to burn a lot of time and money only to find out later that you were way off that mark. That would not be lean. That would not be agile. That would not be pretty much anything we claim we're shooting for. So the best way to determine to validate or invalidate guesses and assumptions early on is going to be step one, recognize where we have guesses and assumptions. And number two, do proper customer research. And that typically means bringing in UX research experts and things like that, people who can speak with customers or observe them and get a different angle. Now, sometimes marketing wants to research with customers, but as I said in my talk, marketing and market research and UX and CX research are sometimes really different and produce very different results. So it's hard for me to say, hey, just have somebody research with customers, because how you do that research and who does that research can end up making a difference. So I would definitely be suggesting UX, user and customer research. And that way, whatever the guesswork is about, we've got a technique and approach that we can use to address it. So is the guesswork about who the customer is, or what their problems are, or what their tasks and goals are? We can handle that. Is the guesswork about whether we have some ideas that we should pursue? Should we pursue this product idea or this feature idea? We're guessing that it's going to be good, but we should know before we spend all that money making it. We've got, again, techniques and approaches that we can use to determine that. Is it that we've prototyped an idea and we want to see if that's going to fly? So there's multiple types of UX and user and customer research, and that's again where UX and CX can be great partners to marketing and help us validate, invalidate, or improve where people have been guessing. So thank you for a really super question. Carl W. Hello, Carl. Looks like he's responding to my talk about behavior triggers. If you're not familiar with behavior triggers, go to my Delta CX YouTube channel at deltacx.tv. Look under live podcasts, and you'll see a podcast just about behavior triggers. It's a model that I suggest. So Carl says, some good ideas, but all this user behavior and data tracking may trigger the creepy allegation. How do you test customer attitudes towards privacy and data collection among target customers and ensure corporate practices around data security to avoid negative word of mouth? Carl's absolutely right, and I hinted at that in my slide, but didn't really have the time to go in as deeply as I should, so Carl's totally right about this. In behavior triggers, I'm talking about about creating algorithms that recognize when customers are on our sites or in our systems, are when customers are having trouble and when they become the risk of being negative metrics we'll all be reporting on later. People who abandoned their carts, people who couldn't figure out our different packages, people who had some other pre-sales problem that we probably could have solved in the moment. And the story I tell during this is about not being able to check out on a site. And even though I got cart abandonment email, I still couldn't check out. And I talk about how can we proactively reach out to those people, maybe through a live chat suggestion, like, hey, we're online. Looks like you're having trouble. Can we help? Obviously, we need UX writers to write better copy. So I don't want it to be creepy. I definitely don't want people to feel stalked. So that's why number one is we're only going to offer people that help once. If they turn it down by not responding to the little chat bug, or they exit out or whatever, we're not going to bug them again. And so that's thing one. That should reduce some of that creepy stalkery thing. Number two, we are going to have to go through testing and iteration on our behavior triggers. And each behavior trigger probably needs its own testing and iteration and refining. So that way we are making sure that people don't feel unnecessarily spied on, or they felt like they really got help in the moment. So there's going to be cases where an internal team is going to think, yeah, make a behavior trigger around that. Let's make an algorithm that notices when that happens. Let's see if they want a little chat. And they're going to get feedback that, like, whoa, why were you watching that? That was kind of creepy. So we're just going to have to keep listening and keep watching and keep refining it. And then as for attitudes towards data and privacy and data collection, we have to be way more transparent and upfront about that. So, cookie notices and whatever, right now, these are really a lot of bull. We're hiding way too much in fine print. However, if I am on someone's website, I fully have the expectation that in one or a zillion ways, they are tracking my experience on that site. I hope they are not sending it to Facebook. I hope they're not selling it to other companies. But if I'm shopping on your site, and the story I tell is about a cruise, if I'm shopping on a cruise website, I expect that you are tracking my movement around that site, whether you've got Google Analytics or 4C or Hotjar or something. You've got some data on it. It's what you do with that data that can make you tomorrow's headlines or not. So what are you doing to maintain that privacy and keep what I've done just between us? What are you doing with the data that you collect? So I think this is just going to be a process of refinement where we figure out where is proactive help helping people and where is proactive help spooking people out. And we just have to keep refining it until we find those sweet spots. Thank you, Carl. Super question. A double question from Kelly C. And Kelly C was responding to a slide I had put up that talked about NPS, Net Promoter Score. And typically in NPS, you're asked from 0 to 10 to rate how likely you are to recommend this company to a friend or colleague. You've seen those. I know you have. And what's typically thought of behind the scenes is 9 and 10 are loyal customers who are going to give positive word of mouth. 7 and 8 are passives. They're probably happy with your company. They might be susceptible to other offerings, but they're just kind of passive about this. And then these lower numbers are people who are detractors, people who might give negative word of mouth and things like that. And what I had said in my talk was, even if you're getting 9s and 10s, it's important to still look for room for improvement. Don't say, we got 9.7, we're wonderful. I had also said that people rating 4 to 8 are probably unhappy with you. You might have already lost them. You might be losing them. And so this is a group of people who you may want to build those behavior triggers around, because you might be losing them. And then, of course, 0 to 4, you probably already lost them, or they hate you, or they're trying to leave, or something like that. Here's Kelly's questions. Kelly's question says, why do people rating you 4 to 8 think you suck? 4 feels far from 8. So, yes, 4 feels far from 8. And I think we just have to think about put yourself in these shoes. When you have filled out Net Promoter Score and you've given someone a 7 or 8, how happy were you? Were you happy enough that you are telling people good things about this company? Are you telling people, I'm still with them, but I'm not totally happy? That's not passive anymore. That's not positive word of mouth. So is a 4 far from an 8? Sure it is. The people who are 4 are probably way more pissed off. They've had more negative experiences than your 8. But to me, I kind of group these people together because to me, they're all probably feeling really middle of the road. 8s are going to be north of middle of the road, 4s are south of middle of the road. But if we're doing a 0 to 10 scale, what's our middle of the road? 5.5? So, 8's not so far, 4's not so far. So I feel like, in some cases, 8 is just a passing grade in many places. If you get lower than an 80 on a test, some colleges will tell you you didn't do well in that unit or on that course. And I've heard of colleges throwing people out when they can't maintain that 80 average. I think 80 is kind of a modern failing grade. We think of failing as 65, but think about under 80. When you see something that says, oh, we got a 75, that's not good anymore. 78, not good anymore. So is a 4 and an 8 in exactly the same spot? No. But what are we doing about any of this? We can get caught up on how does 4 feel and how does 8 feel, but there's blocks of people who are not happy with your company in varying degrees on a spectrum. What are we doing about that? She also says, in other words, we need to meet people where they are. And I wonder if someone who is a 4 is I'm not doing well this morning. I wonder if someone who is a 4 is in the same spot as an 8. I imagine different levels of resources needed to engage across this 4 to 8 range. And that brings up a new question. A lot of people who are into NPS and on the marketing side will say, we really have to reach out to these people who are in this range and proactively blah, blah, blah. How often do you do it? I have almost no companies doing this. And here's the thing. By the time you're asking me for my NPS score, you're not proactive. You're reactive. So you can be reactive and you can react differently to the 4 scores than you do to the 8 scores. And I'm not going to show up at your job and tell you you're terrible. But my question is, how do we be more proactive and how do we be more predictive so that a 4 never gets to a 4? So that today's 8 isn't tomorrow's 4 or today's 9 isn't tomorrow's 6. What are we doing before we ask people their NPS? And that's why I tell the story during the talk that about the website hosting company I was using that I was unhappy with. I'd had a number of poor interactions with customer service. I told customer service, if this is how this is going to be handled, I'm going to leave. And of course, the ticket was closed. So what happened? I started leaving. I started moving my most important websites over to another hosting company. And I kept my lesser important domains on this old hosting company because I'm lazy, not because I'm happy with them. And when they sent me an NPS thing, I gave them the lowest score on it, which was a 0 or 1. And then I get a sales email. Oh, why'd we get a low score? Who are you? What are you doing with how do you use our system? And what problems are you having? That's lazy. Go read my support tickets. Debbie, we read your support tickets. We found you were having problems sending email. Here's what we can do about that. Go read my support tickets. Don't ask me to fix my own problem. I tried. So what are we doing before NPS? So it's not that I disagree with Kelly. Kelly is totally right. Maybe a 4 is in a different place than an 8. But these are all people who are starting to feel a little iffy about your company. And could we have saved them before? Could my hosting company have reached out before when I was threatening to leave in a support ticket? You probably thought I wasn't serious. My hosting company didn't reach out when I moved my first site off their system. But they knew because when I logged in, I get a message saying this domain doesn't seem to be hosted by us. So, do you need troubleshooting? So that's the long answer for Kelly. And Kelly, let me know if you have more questions. Thanks to the people watching on LinkedIn and YouTube, I am going through questions I received while doing a keynote a few days ago for the American Marketing Association. People asked questions that I didn't have time to answer, and I want to answer it and email them this video. So let's move on. Lauren S. Lauren S. I answered this one during the talk, but you know what? It's worth mentioning quickly again. Lauren S. says, if you're interested in getting more into user experience and customer experience, but don't have a computer or coding background, what should you study? I wouldn't tell you to study coding anyway. UX is highly, highly, highly about cognitive psychology. So the types of things that I would suggest studying if you're more interested in user and customer experience would be cognitive psychology, human behavior. It seems like, well, what about computers and what about sketching screens? The core and the foundation of everything that we do when we're doing it correctly is in cognitive psychology and human behavior, and I would read up on that. Start with Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things, and also check out Don't Make Me Think. Okay, Lori R. Hello, Lori R. Where do we download the slides? Okay, I'm not going to handle that one. Someone else will handle that one. Super question here from Nathaniel J. Hello, Nathaniel J. And Nathaniel says, how do you tactfully resolve situations where the wrong participants, in air quotes, are C-suite level inserting themselves in the process? This is an excellent question and actually one I've answered before in my live office hours, which I do every Tuesday at 6:15 p.m. Italy time. So if you have questions, you can join there or send me questions. So we talked about this one before, and the problem is stakeholders or managers, leaders, executives sometimes want to be a little over-involved in a UX or research project, and they typically want to be interviewed as if they are the target customers. Sometimes they want to try to plan and do our work with us. That's bad. That's bad for culture. That's bad for the outcome. That's not lean. That's not the proper utilization of my talent. And it's definitely not agile. So, what I normally tell people is, first of all, if it has to do with interviews, I'm sorry, I've got a bug flying in front of me. I'm not crazy. If it has to do with interviews, you can always interview the stakeholders. You can always interview the C-suite to see what they know about the problem or the customers or something else about this. You can interview them to find out what they see as success criteria and how will we know we've improved this on the business side. And if they say stuff that doesn't really make sense for what we're trying to learn, you just kind of filter that out. You know, if someone says, I know everything about our customers and I know that they only write with red pens, so we should just be making red pens. Okay, thanks, I'll make a note of that. Say something neutral. Thanks, I'll make a note of that. And then we don't do that. Or you go find other ways to validate that. Hi, I spoke to 10 customers. They write with blue pens. I'm thinking maybe your information about customers just got a little outdated. So when higher level people try to insert themselves into the process, it's hard because the core message there is either they don't know what you do or they don't trust you to do it. And that is a job problem, that is a culture problem, that's a problem in pretty much every methodology you can think of. I normally tell people to brush up their resumes and portfolios and look at moving on because it's very hard to convince management that don't trust you to get your work done, to start trusting you. So the answer to this question depends on how they're trying to insert themselves in the process. The more they try to insert themselves in the process, the less they understand and trust you. And if you know they don't really understand and trust you, you're probably not going to stay very long at that job. So C-suite, managers, leaders, execs who might be listening, remember you hired great people, let them do their work. Agile Manifesto Principle number 5, hire great people, trust them, give them, time and tools and whatever, resources, trust them to get the job done. So, Nathaniel, I could probably answer your question better if I knew where the C-suite is trying to insert themselves. But typically, another thing I find is when you're starting a project and you're in those early planning phases, you probably have to create some boundaries at that point and indicate where execs or other people will be collaborating or working with you, or where you're running a workshop to collect their ideas, and where you're going to do your work and report to them. Little distance, little boundaries. So I find early establishment of those boundaries can try to help, but if you have some difficult leadership or some narcissists, that is hard to change. And sometimes you're just moving on. Susan M is responding to my slide about when empathy is not empathy because we send people all kinds of crap that isn't relevant to them. And I told the story of how, as a woman in my 40s, I get all kinds of stuff including from companies I do business with who should know me fairly well, relating to children, shopping for children, back to school, happy Mother's Day. And I have no children, and that's on purpose. So I'm happy about having no children. But my point was, there are many people who don't have children, and they're not happy about it. There are people who have tragically lost a child. How do we send those people Happy Mother's Day? How do we send those people it's back to school time? That's got to be emotionally painful for those people. And if we had empathy, real empathy, we would stop sending people such garbage. So I have a slide around that. Susan's responding to that, and she says, how are you able to get the data for personalizing messaging, like you mentioned, for things like being childless, owning a pet, so you can increase empathy for those people? Fantastic question, Susan. I think there's a few ways to do this. One is, I had pointed out in my slide, I've never shopped for children, ever. I don't buy gifts for friends' children. I kind of don't have family with young children. I kind of don't like young children. So I mean, if you were to really be tracking my behaviors online, you would see there is zero overlap between me and children. Now, it's a little bit harder when you have someone who doesn't have children or is self-conscious about being childless, but they've been shopping for other people's children. We don't know then. And I talked about how there was a site I was on recently. It might have been my Italian bank. It might have been my Italian bank. I live in Italy, so I've banking in America, banking in Italy. It might have been my Italian bank, and there was a checkbox in my profile that was like, would you like to receive promotional or marketing emails relating to children? And it was unchecked by default, which was nice, and I kept it unchecked. So I think, Susan, in some cases where we can't totally go by the behavior we can collect on our website, because I never know, you might not know if I'm shopping for children because I have them or because I know them, we might just want to ask and make it optional. And then really target those people. You know, if you find out that I own a pet, maybe you go wild offering me pet related stuff, or when I get to the homepage there's a pet ad where someone else sees a diaper ad. So I think we can do smarter things, but in some cases we're just going to have to ask, and in many cases they're not going to answer. They're not going to volunteer this information. So what can we learn from their behaviors online, and where can we ask? And I don't have a better answer right now until there's some sort of smarter central database, because when Facebook thinks that I enjoy lockpicking and the country of Suriname, which I don't even know where it is, but Facebook had listed these things as things I'm into, and I don't, lockpicking is a joke. Okay, so I know about that. That's from watching a YouTuber who picks locks. But back in my Facebook days, when I left Facebook over 2 years ago, I once went to a special page where you can see every interest Facebook thinks you have, and it was mostly bull. It was mostly stuff I am absolutely not interested it in, but either someone had written an article about it and I pressed like on it to be nice, so now they think I'm interested in it. And it was some really creepy stuff in there, like the country of Suriname, which I can't even pronounce, so I know nothing about. So Facebook has me all wrong. I even wrote a blog post about that. I should go find what that was. So I think for now we're going to have to ask people until AI is smarter, until machine learning is smarter. Right now, people are just not getting what I like. Even Amazon. I bought a headlamp off Amazon. It's actually right on my desk. And then later on, I went to buy replacement batteries for it. And after I looked at the replacement batteries, Amazon started showing me a lot of e-cigarettes. And I was like, I've never smoked anything in my life. I've never bought an e-cigarette thing. Why is Amazon sending me this? And I did a little digging and I found that the battery in my headlamp is a common battery in e-cigarettes. So Amazon jumped to the conclusion that I was an e-cigarette user and started pushing a lot of e-cigarette stuff to me. That was lazy. I wrote a blog post on that. So sorry for the extra long answer to Susan, but I don't have a great answer until we have better AI and stuff like that. It's probably just going to be a couple of check boxes in your profile and trying to maybe once in a while push people there to see if we can get that information. Gently. Terry joined a little late and asked, what is PSE? And PSE is an abbreviation that I use throughout my book and my presentations, and it just stands for products, services, and experiences. I find it's really hard to keep saying product, services, and experiences to talk about what your company offers, because I don't know where you work. You work at a hotel, and your hotel makes a website and an app, but it also has rooms and a pool and check-in staff and a restaurant. There's products, services, and experiences at every company. And so I made up the term PSE to shorten it so that I don't have to keep saying products, services, and experiences. So there you go. That is that. Terry, thanks for asking. Also, let's take a look at, we have a few more questions. Someone found a spelling error in one of my slides. Thank you, Teresa. I will look for that and fix it. I got two other questions that showed up in the chat. Let me see if I can find it. And thanks to the people who watched this, I actually, in the middle of my talk, I had a power failure. So that not only derailed me for a few minutes, but then when I came back, the system wouldn't let me share my slides. I mean, it was just kind of that worst case scenario. And thanks to everybody who stuck with me. Let's see, we have a question here that was from Freeman, who says, do you think a lot of firms or companies still haven't learned from their feedback of past bad UX and they're still not being fixed? I have found that a lot of experience is still a big gap. Freeman, I think so. I think people are not necessarily learning from feedback of bad UX. What I say in some slides you guys didn't see because I didn't have enough time in an hour because I have over 400 slides and something had to be cut, is I tend to believe that companies really don't get the hint about their bad UX until someone calculates the financial cost of that bad UX. So for example, if we have Project A and we have Project B and they have separate budgets and we do Project A and we spend that money and we release it to the public and we close the book on it. That was the budget. That was the amount of time it took. We're wonderful. Everybody hugs. Don't hug. I don't want you to get in trouble, but you know what I'm saying. Now we're going to work on Project B with its own timing and its own budget and its own deadlines. While we're working on B, we get the feedback on Project A. Project A has problems. Maybe it's a disaster, maybe it's got some small problems, but these need to be fixed. And Agile says when you have gathered feedback from the customer, you must make those fixes on timelines within 1 month. So it means we can't let bad stuff hang around forever. If you really want to be agile, you're supposed to be fixing it within weeks. So what happens typically, not everywhere, is Project B gets interrupted so that we can fix Project A. Now, Project B can be completely derailed. But then another question is, where did the money come from to fix Project A? All of the product managers, project managers, UX people, engineers, marketing, customer support, all the people who got paid something to now fix Project A. What's that? Where'd that go? Is that fed back into budget A, so someone can look at A and go, oh man, we really blew it. Wow, we really got that wrong. We spent way too much time on this. We went way over budget because it needed all of these fixes because of poor UX that we rushed out or didn't fully test or whatever. Or very often it gets baked into Project B's budget. Project B runs a little late, goes a little over budget, and everybody doesn't talk about it. I think if we looked much more closely at the real cost of having to fix bad stuff, companies would feel the pain a little bit more and they would be more likely to care about UX and CX. Let's see, I had another question here. It was really someone just disagreeing with me, which is fine, but I wanted to give my response to it. Let's see. This is Laura P. And Laura P says, you say that people are not good at telling you what other people might think. So this is related to a slide that where I was talking about sometimes marketing will survey customers or interview customers, and they will ask something like, would your friends use this? Would your family use this? So, hey, Debbie, you love drinking out of these giant cups that you buy from the restaurant supply store. Would your friends like drinking out of these cups? Well, my point was that's really a guess. I might be superimposing myself and I might say, well, I like drinking out of them. Sure, my friends would like to drink out of them. These cups are great. But I don't know that, and I'm guessing that. So my point was that, in general, people are not only bad at guessing and predicting their own behavior. How many vegetables will you eat this week? But they're really even worse at predicting what other people will do, mostly because sometimes we just don't know what other people will do. Sometimes we're looking through our own eyes and we have bias, and not prejudice, but bias. And we think, yeah, everybody's going to do what I would do, or everybody's going to do whatever, or if I like this, my friends would like this. So Laura, it was Laura, right? Laura P says, you say these people are not good at telling you what other people might think, but there's a significant field of study, predictive markets, that says just the opposite. It indicates you actually get much better, more honest. So it sounds like, and again, I am not familiar with predictive markets because all of my prediction is done through more of a UX research approach. So you get much better and more honest answers. Oh, wait, hold on. There was more here, and Excel's not showing it to me. You get much better, more honest answers when you ask people what they think others will do. All right, well, that didn't help there. Yeah, so what do I think other people will do? It really depends on how much true empathy I have and how well I know that person. So if you're asking me, will your colleague do this? I don't know. How well do I know that person? I can make a guess. If you're asking me, what will my boyfriend do? I can probably guess. It's still a guess because I can't know, but I can guess with probably a high degree of accuracy. So it really depends on who we're asking. Now, funny enough, I have 7 of these cups, 10 of these cups. My boyfriend won't drink out of them. We live together, we share cups, he doesn't use them. They don't match the cups that he grew up with. He's got a different approach to cups. So if you had said, hey, Debbie, will your boyfriend drink out of this cup? I only know he won't because he hasn't. But when I first brought them home, I thought, these cups are awesome. He's going to love them. Why does he have that terrible bottle at his desk that's probably getting moldy? Use this cup. And he doesn't. So, and he's still amazing. So I think that while we like to imagine that that people are good at predicting others, it really depends on how well they know those people, because we can all make predictions. Predictions are easy, but how right were those predictions? And a lot of times marketing teams and companies will run into problems where their predictions didn't bear out. Hey, we did some research or we ran a survey and it looks like everyone's going to want this feature. Everyone is willing to pay a little extra to get this thing we're thinking of building. Or everyone said their friends are going to love this. And then we built it, and that didn't happen. Does anyone want to admit then that maybe their research was flawed? So I think that if we want to try to get people, the best way to learn what other people think is to interview other people. It's so much better for you to interview my boyfriend about what he might do or choose than to ask me to guess what my boyfriend might do or choose. So, Laura, I think this is just an area where we're going to disagree because there's always a field of study that says something. And so I think there's always something we can find that backs up our way of thinking, which of course is a cognitive bias on its own. But I think that in this case, very often what will end up is, we say the proof is in the pudding. What ended up happening? If people predicted that other people would behave a certain way, were they right? To what degree were they right? That's the proof. To me, that's the proof. That's it, because I've seen too many articles of, we asked customers what they want, and we asked customers to say, would they like this thing if we built it? And they all said yes, and then we built it and nobody used it. So where's your predictive market now? So those were the questions that I received during the Ask Me Anything, during the AMA, American Marketing Association keynote, that those were the ones I didn't get time to answer, so I wanted to make sure people got answers. I know this is a bit of a long video. Hopefully you were able to watch it or skip around and find the answers that you were looking for. So thanks again to all. I had hundreds of people who were there, and that was just absolutely beautiful. I'm scrolling through their names now, and such a great audience, and I'm so sorry that I ran out of time to take questions because my power failed. And yes, I am given all of your email addresses, and I am not going to email anybody except the people who asked questions, and I'm not putting anybody on a mailing list. So you can trust me with email addresses. Thanks again, and I'm going to wrap up the stream for now, but I hope to see everybody again soon, hopefully in something from the American Marketing Association, because working with them was just absolutely a pleasure. Thank you again to Marnie and Dr. Brittany. So that's it. I will shut down the stream. Let's press a couple of buttons here. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.